confidence is relaxed, centered, okay? A relaxed, centered feeling. Okay, so when you are relaxed, when you are, let's say, confident, that means that you are calm, you are centered, you are relaxed. Okay, now a lot of people are very, nervous right now about a lot of things. We have a war going on. We have a few wars going on. Okay, we have a lot of unsettling things going on. Okay, especially if you're on social media. If you're on social media, if you watch the news, okay, if you're watching too much news, okay, so let's say it for what it is. Okay, it's just a bunch of fear going in a cycle. Okay, if you're watching news, okay, um, and some people, I know when I visit my mom, right, she's got Fox News on like day and night. I mean, just if she can tell me who all the people are, and she's a fan of this one and that one, and whatever. But there's a lot of fear involved in that. Now, if you can separate yourself from being emotionally involved with it, or let's say if you can separate yourself from having anxiety over it. Okay, good morning, good morning. Good morning, Jay. There you are. Uh, if you're if you're let's say getting caught up in it, okay, believing the hype, that kind of thing, okay, because the war or things like that or whatever you see on the news is there for a reason. Okay, they don't put good news on the news, okay, because it doesn't sell, it doesn't attract people. The purpose of having news is to attract people to the news station, okay, and they have sponsors, so they run commercials, okay, and the commercials are there for a reason. Okay, so a lot of things that are being projected upon us are in the name of commerce, okay, because everything is a business. If you start looking at life like a business, like everything involved is a business, okay, life will get a lot easier. You need a certificate to drive a car. You need a death certificate when you die, okay? So it doesn't just end there, right? The last thing is the death certificate. There you go. So, and these are just, a few things, right? These are just a few things. But anxiety and fear are a real thing. If you feel anxious, okay, if you're a person with anxiety, it's a very real thing. Okay, so I've been healing anxiety in people for years and years and years. Um, Tons of people. But the purpose for healing anxiety in people for me was always to enhance their professional careers, okay, to enhance what they're already doing. In other words, to get the stumbling blocks out of the way, okay, to get the resistance out of the way. Why? Because then they can go work in flow state. Then they can accelerate their performance. Then they can capitalize on clarity. Okay? What happens when you take away anxiety? When you remove anxiety, okay, from a person, that basically means that you're eliminating negative emotions. Okay? Doubt, grief, guilt, shame, okay? Because all of these things, worry, okay? Because all of these things are rooted in fear. All the negative emotions are rooted in fear. Okay, irritation, anger, all of these things are rooted in fear. They're all defense. They're defense mechanisms that trigger other defense mechanisms. So when you're suffering from anxiety, okay, sometimes it's sensory overload. Okay, sometimes there's just too many things being projected onto you at once. Okay, but the way that or the purpose for me teaching people about this is for manifestation, okay, and mostly professionals. So how do you maximize efficiency and productivity in your career? Well, you get rid of anxiety, okay. So now I'm doing the lives, okay, but I'm doing the lives for everyday people. Why? So that you guys, I'm not getting paid for this, right? So that you guys know what these things are and what these triggers are. Because a lot of people don't know, and they just go to the doctor, and the doctor will give them medicine, and the medicine treats a symptom. It doesn't treat the cause. So holistically, you can treat the cause. Holistically, you can treat what the real problem is. Okay? And there's a lot of things that cause anxiety. There's a lot of things that make people anxious. Okay? Some of them are tablets and laptops and cell phones. Those kinds of things. That creates anxiety as well. Okay? Now, if you have a problem sitting still, okay, it's very difficult to do meditation. And our 4 pillars that we use is affirmations, meditation, vocalization, visualization. Okay, it's a very spiritual process because we're working with your energy, and we say you're not your body, you're not your name, you're that energy that lives in here. Okay? Now, when you start to look at life like, okay, the body and the spirit. Okay, the spirit is in here. Okay, the spirit always has control over the body, or let's say over your physical circumstances. Why? Because it's in here. Okay, I'm making my fingers move like this. Okay, but it's a thought. Thoughts become things in the physical world. But when you're anxious, you don't have clarity. Good morning, guys. Good morning, thank you. How do you think about World War III? Well, nothing good, that's for sure. So, if you're feeling anxious, like about World War III, okay? So there was World War I, there was World War II, we're on World War III, it's supposed to be the final war, according to religious scriptures, okay? We're not going to talk about the war per se in the politics, let's say in the realm of politics or the topic of politics, but yeah, the war is making people anxious because people don't know what's coming next. Okay, like what will happen next? There's all kinds of conspiracy theories, there's religious theories, there's military theories, okay? But the main thing is that you're good in here, okay? Because it gives you hope, okay? Not only does it give you hope, it gives you a better mindset. And that's important if you have anxiety, if you're anxious. Why does that matter? Because the proper mindset is necessary. First of all, understanding what the problem is. Okay. Secondly, understanding that if you're anxious and if you have anxiety, it takes you away from your goals. It takes you away from, let's say, adequate manifestation, because you manifest whether you think so or not. You manifest whether you believe in it or not. It's not something you have to believe in, because all of your actions have resulted in what you have, what you do, who your friends are, okay? All of these things. It's not just a material thing like what you have, okay? It's your lifestyle. It's who you attract. It's who you're around, okay? Now, a lot of people think that, well, if I'm spiritual, right? Or if I'm religious, or if I believe in God, I leave it up to God's hands, right? I leave it in God's hands. Or if I'm spiritual, I leave it in source's hands or whatever, like that. And a lot of people tell me this. But a lot of these spiritual people, religious people, they're broke. They're in bad health. They're in poor health. They don't have things. So why would this be? Like, this must be unfair, right? Well, today, in the context of anxiety and being anxious, okay, we're going to talk about that side of it, okay? But in this context of anxiety, it works for people with anxiety too, okay? So if you're anxious, you're not manifesting properly. If you're anxious, you're not bringing the right things into your life. Why? Because you're not in the proper state. You don't have clarity. So anxiety, right? Like when you're overthinking, okay? When you're overthinking, you start thinking, you consider all of these thoughts, and most of these thoughts are going to be negative. Because once you think a negative thought, more than 6 seconds, you have 6 seconds to abandon the thought. But once you focus on the thought, your amygdala starts giving you different variations on a theme and the what ifs. And all the what ifs are going to be rooted in fear. So a lot of people say, well, I believe, I'll leave it in God's hands. No, you have to do the work yourself. There's an old saying that says God only helps those who help themselves. So whether you believe in God or source or however you believe, or if you don't believe, if you think it's just you, okay? Henry Ford said, if you think you can or you think you can't, either way you're correct. So it all depends on what you focus on. It all depends on how you manifest things. Okay, because like I said, I know some religious people who have a lot of money, who have good careers, who are very healthy. And then I know other religious people who don't have anything. And that wouldn't be fair. Religiously, in religion, right? But they're not making the right choices. Okay? And in order to make the right choices, or let's say clear choices, you need clarity. Okay? And in order to achieve that, you need to do affirmations, meditation, vocalization, visualization. The vocalization exercise pulls people out of anxiety very quickly. I've been doing this for 37 years. And in the beginning, it didn't register with me until later in my career. And I'm like, oh, okay. I just saw them as confident. Okay, so confidence, like I said, is a relaxed inner calm. That's what confidence is. Okay, so fear cannot exist where confidence is, and vice versa. Okay, but the main reasons that anxiety disrupts the process of, and we want to say too that the voice is the audible expression of your nervous system, okay, and your emotional state. So the eyes are the mirrors of the soul. The voice is the mirror of your feelings and emotions. If you know how to read a pair of eyes, okay, if you know what you're looking at, in other words, are you looking at a stressful pair of eyes? You know, are the pupils dilated or pinpointed? Okay, when you're talking to someone, when you're speaking to someone, and do you know what those things mean? Look it up, it'll help you. Okay? But when a person finds their voice, okay, and this process that we do with people to pull them out of anxiety and fear, okay, they regain regulation. I'm talking about nervous system regulation, expression, and personal power. Why? Because now they achieve clarity. Let's say it another way. There's no emotional garbage. They become more emotionally intelligent. What does that do? It brings composure. Okay? It makes people more composed and relaxed and centered. I had to achieve a lot of things in my life because I had a lot of goals, a lot of different things. And I did 4 careers simultaneously. But I worked in block time. So I sectioned off my calendar. It was pretty crazy. But I sectioned off my calendar for different things. So for one company, I worked, 2 or 3 time blocks, and then for the next company, I did another time block, and for another company, I did another time block. And my day began at 4 o'clock in the morning. It ended at 8:30 at night. Thank you. Braveheart, thank you so much. Okay, and you can look me up. Just put my name in any AI or browser or whatever. All my work is there. Well, maybe for the last since 2007, I think. So that's the deeper truth regarding your voice. Okay, so your voice can heal you emotionally. It brings emotional healing. Why is that important for manifestation? It's important because when you're clear in here, you produce clear thoughts that produce clear actions that get clear results. If you're not sure, let's say you're not sure of your decisions, you may be making a decision that's not ideal for your situation, whatever that is. And you can tell. Look around you. Look in your immediate vicinity. Okay? The decisions that you're making give you results. Okay, look at the condition of your car, look at the condition of your house, of your bedroom, of your desk at work, of your things in your garage, whatever. Okay? Because the law of correspondence says that everything in here is mirrored out here. In other words, you can't have a really organized mind and not have an organized house. It doesn't work that way. Okay? So those are some clues. Now, anxiety programs the subconscious with fear. And what does that do? That creates a wash, rinse, repeat cycle. Okay? Anxiety programs your subconscious. Now, it's called the subconscious for a reason. Some people call it the unconscious mind. Okay, I prefer subconscious. Okay, so the subconscious gets programmed with fear from anxiety. And then it creates a feedback loop. Okay? So a feedback loop is, sort of like a, action result. Okay? So thought, action, result kind of thing. But it keeps it going in a circle. And the subconscious will make it a habit. When the subconscious makes it a habit, guess what? Human beings already have negativity bias for survival. But then you start living in survival mode. Okay, your voice pulls you out of that. Affirmations start directing new directions, okay, new directives to your subconscious, new programming to your subconscious. Now, you may think, oh, well, I'm just writing this stuff and, it won't happen or whatever. No, it happens. It happens, okay? But you have to do the work and you have to condition your subconscious first. Let me show you what that looks like. So if I, grab one of my old tablets, I just keep this here so I can show you guys, okay? These are affirmations. It looks crazy. These are affirmations, okay? It's not journaling. But when you do these daily, okay, what happens? Your subconscious gets really sharp. It starts working really quick. And what the subconscious does when it believes something, and a belief is a thought you keep thinking, the subconscious will start forming pathways towards your goal, whatever it is, good or bad. Okay, so if there's fear there, if anxiety is beginning to program you into fearful thoughts, you're going to start seeing fearful things. How does that work? Well, first, you become anxious. Okay? Then your anxiety starts programming your subconscious. Then the reticular activating system in your brainstem starts to filter out things that aren't involved with anxiety, pertaining to your thoughts, pertaining to the things that make you anxious. Then what does that do? It filters in things that make you anxious. And the feedback loop is that this goes on over and over and over and over. And until this cycle is broken, it's going to be a thing for you. It's going to be a habit. Okay? Margot, what is block time? Oh, okay. Let's take time out to answer Margot in the chat. Okay, so block time is like So I scheduled block time. Hi, Margot. So I scheduled block time for my companies because I had more than one. So it's like from 7 to 8, I'm going to do emails for one company. From 8 to 9, I am going to do emails for another company. Okay, normally I do emails in half an hour. Okay, and so yeah, so block time means from 7 to 7:30 every morning, I'm doing emails. From 7:30 to 8 every morning, I'm working on XYZ. And then from maybe 9 to 9:30 every morning, I'm taking a break. Okay, and you need to schedule breaks into your work time, at least 3 half an hour breaks a day. Yeah. So anyway, that's what block time is. So you schedule block time. It's easier to get a lot accomplished in block time, and then you don't allow people to bother you during that time. Okay, and what we do with executives, or we have nurses, we have doctors, we have attorneys. What we do with them in the training is we get them into flow state. So the affirmations, meditation, vocalization, visualization gets them into flow state. Okay, and then their subconscious starts wash, rinsing, and repeating with good habits. And the vocal exercise actually pulls them out of the doubt and fear, so to speak. And well, actually, not so to speak, it pulls them out, and then they can work in flow state. And then the time blocks work very effectively like that. Okay, so if you're starting a business or that kind of thing, it's very good to work in block time, and you have to follow the block time. Okay, when the alarm goes off to start the next thing, you have to just, I call it mouse down, because most of my things that I did for my companies were building online. All of our companies are online, and so I had this thing called mouse down, and every time my alarm went off to go to the next block, I put my mouse down and I did whatever it said to do. So yeah, and you can program your day like that, and when you do that and follow it, you'll be surprised at how productive you'll be. Okay, so anyway, um, your subconscious mind learns through repetition and emotional intensity. Okay, could you give each example for the vocalization, visualization, meditation, please? Oh, okay. Let me get through this first, and I'll see if I can get. Today we're talking about anxiety, so let me see if I can go over that. Okay. I'll try. I'll try. Um, I'll get there somehow. So so emotional intensity is really important when you're programming your subconscious. Okay, because you have to be excited about what you're doing. You have to be positive about what you're doing. Okay. Now there is this thing called fake it to make it. Okay. In my in my experience, and I've experienced this a lot because I focus on these things. In my experience, energy is synonymous with emotion. Energy. Okay. So I used to teach 3-year-olds. Every once in a while, I still teach a 3-year-old. And when I teach 3-year-olds, they don't understand anything. Okay, but they understand energy. They don't understand feeling. Okay, they understand intensity in the way of more or less. They understand that. Okay, but if you tell a 3-year-old, oh, sing with feeling, they don't know what that is. But if you say give Uncle more energy, they'll come out with more energy. They understand that. So I started to experiment with manifestation. And I can tell you, I do it a lot with money. Okay. I do it a lot with money. In the old days, I did this whole thing where I did affirmations for small amounts of money, and it got larger and larger and larger. And I wrote affirmations up to $5,000. Okay, now this is not voodoo or witchcraft or anything weird like that. Okay, this is your subconscious. Okay, so your subconscious can only bring into your world what you can wrap your mind around. if it's not realistic to you, or if you've never done it, or if you've never held $5,000 in your hand before, or whatever, you need to work your way up slowly, because everything in life grows. And as it grows for you physically, it will grow for you mentally in your subconscious. Okay? So the emotional intensity I'm talking about is you need to get excited about whatever idea you're putting in your subconscious. Okay, so let's say it's money and you want to bring money. Just say bring money. Bring money. Okay, you're speaking to your subconscious. Right now, my subconscious doesn't know if I'm talking to you or if I'm talking to me. Your subconscious cannot distinguish fantasy from reality. When you get bills in the mail, for example, okay, I don't get bills in the mail, I get digital stuff. So our companies are all digital. But back in the day when I did, I wrote on the bill, thank you for the money. Your subconscious does not know, okay? And you have to be excited when you do that, okay? What do most people do? Because it happened to me, because I, did this years and years ago. Before 2007, when I got a bill, right, I would look at the bill and go, right? Because why? Because it's money going out. Okay, the other thing I did, right? Because things will occupy your thoughts, and a belief is a thought you keep thinking, and when you put a belief in your subconscious, like I said, your subconscious will look for avenues to bring more of that. Okay? So I started leaving all the bills in a stack until it was time to pay bills, because it gave me anxiety. It made me anxious. Why? Because, while I was doing my job or whatever task I was doing, I was also in the back of my head going, oh man, and pretty soon it's going to be the 15th, and I got to pay this amount, and I got to make sure we get that amount, and whatever. And I had 4 companies. I had to keep track of 4 businesses. So I was very anxious at certain points. So I started leaving everything in a stack and say, okay, we're going to pay bills on whatever, the 12th or 13th, whatever it was. Anxiety went away. Why? Because I wasn't thinking about it. Okay? So that could be a solution for you depending on your situation. Okay? But I'm just saying something that worked for me that got rid of anxiety or did not add to my anxiety. I have ADHD, so sometimes I get anxious, but it's just the way my brain is wired. Okay. But when you leave everything in its envelope and you don't even look at it till it's time to pay the bills, okay, then you make time and say, okay, you schedule your block time, right? Right? From 7 to 8 o'clock, I'm going to pay bills. That's all I'm going to do. Or whatever, however long it takes you to do these things. And then you address it. Because people don't always do what they're doing. 95% of your life is subconscious. In other words, a lot of people are sleepwalking because it's automatic. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to learn how to drive the car every day. You don't have to learn how to eat every day. All of that stuff. Thank you, guys. Thank you. But when you have anxiety, or if you're being treated for anxiety, okay, or just anxiety is the underlying current of fear that you have, because that's what it is. It's an underlying current of fear. It's a very subtle fear, but it's there. And then you get triggered into things. Okay? And when you're anxious, the mind repeatedly runs through thoughts like, what if this doesn't work? What if that goes wrong? Okay? This is your amygdala working. Okay? Something bad's going to happen. Oh, I know something bad's going to happen. You ever have that feeling when things are working really, really well? And you start thinking, something bad's probably going to happen because everything's too good right now. You see? Okay? That's not normal. And you can change that. How do you change that? I'm so happy and grateful now that everything is turning out great for me. Thank you. Write it down. Now you shift your mindset. Now what are you doing? You're anticipating good stuff happening. Will good stuff always happen? Probably not. But you know what? In my experience, more happens than less. Okay, there was this guy that I watched on this documentary years and years and years ago, and he said, I used to get more bills in the mail than checks, and now that I did my affirmations, I have more checks than bills in the mail. And I thought, you know what? I have more bills than checks in the mail. I'm gonna try this. So I wrote an affirmation for more checks than bills in the mail, and I didn't get very many checks in the mail. Guess what? I started getting checks in the mail. Okay, and they were for like off the wall kind of thing, like weird kind of stuff. Okay, but this isn't magic. This is your subconscious. Okay, because your subconscious will set up pathways towards these things. Okay, you will start creating actions, even if you're not aware of it. You will create actions that set up these responses subconsciously. You're not aware of it, but you do it, and these things happen. Why? Because your subconscious is trying to make it happen. Okay? Your subconscious doesn't know imagination from reality. It cannot tell. Okay? If you're watching the same movie over and over, I remember I saw this one movie and I liked it, so I used to watch it over and over and over. Is that because of trauma? Is what because of trauma? I'm sorry, Maggie. I go through a lot of things. Can you please elaborate on that for me and tell me is what because of trauma? So your subconscious doesn't know reality from fantasy, right? So I was watching this movie a lot, and guess what? These circumstances started popping up in real life. Was it really happening? Yeah, it was. But my reticular activating system was showing it to me because I was focused on it, because I was watching the movie all the time. So what happens when a movie is shown to 1 million people? These things start to pop up in real life. Okay? Because you're a spiritual being in here. You're not your body, you're not your name, you're a spirit. You're that spirit that lives in here. Okay? You've been given a name, you've been given a body. Okay? But you start in spiritual form. Why is this important to know? Because the spirit has command over the body. Because the spiritual has command over the physical. Okay? All day long. Okay? So instead of, reinforcing negative outcomes, you start producing positive outcomes. Having the fear of bad things happen all the time. So yeah, of course that could be the result of trauma. Yeah. So the definition of trauma is an emotional event, okay, of something bad that sticks out because it was, because it was so bad. So that's the definition of trauma. Okay, I work with military people that have PTSD, and every once in a while, I'll have somebody that has PTSD, and I tell this story every once in a while. But the bottom line of it is their trauma is severe. Okay, it's a different kind of trauma. Okay, but it's severe, and when they walk into, let's say, a crowded mall, okay, they get very uptight and they get panic attacks sometimes if it's extreme, and they feel like, okay, one of these guys could be the enemy kind of stuff, okay? And with the vocal exercises that we give them, the vocalization, what happens is they calm down inside, okay? Do they still get concerned? Yeah, but they can manage it. I call that the switch. They flip the switch and they can deal with it. They flip the switch, take a couple of deep breaths, and they can walk through it, they can manage it, and they end up walking through the mall. They end up, just kind of making the best of it. Okay, they still get uptight, they're still kind of walking with, hey, they're still kind of looking around, that kind of thing. Okay, but they make it, and they start doing it, and they become more comfortable with the situation. Okay. So anxiety activates the survival brain, your amygdala. Okay, the amygdala is sometimes called the survival brain. Okay, but your anxiety is going to activate that. Okay, the anxiety or the fear in your subconscious is going to activate your amygdala. Okay, the amygdala is like an almond shaped thing on both sides of both hemispheres of your brain on underneath. Okay, but those are like your danger sensors. It senses danger. It makes you think. It's a survival thing. We need it to, for evolution. We need it to survive. But when you're living in survival mode, okay, when your subconscious has learned that, okay, we're looking for fearful stuff, your reticular activating system goes, okay, we're filtering in the stuff to be afraid about, the things to trigger you about. And what does the amygdala do? It gives you all the negative what ifs. What if this? What if that? What if this? What if that? Now, if you need to survive, it's useful. If there's a threat, your amygdala is always presenting threats. Threat, this, that. Okay? And in abuse, that happens. Why? It's like the dog with the stick. Okay? If you hit a dog with the stick enough over a period of time, no matter who goes next to the dog is expecting the stick. Okay? Thank you. You're welcome, Maggie. You're very welcome. The dog is looking for the stick. He's anticipating the stick. He's waiting for the stick. And even if you're a kind person, you're a loving person, you love the dog, and there's no stick in your hand, okay? The dog is still cowering. The dog is still going away from you. He's still shying away. Why? Because he's expecting a stick. He's been trained to expect a stick. So people with, repeated trauma of the same thing, okay, whether they attracted it or not, because you can be a random victim, okay? But you're anticipating negativity. You're anticipating the worst case scenario. You're anticipating, okay? Your amygdala is going, hey, what if this? What if this? What if this? Almost as if to say, what if there's a stick? And you're going, no, I don't think there's a, but what if there's a stick? No, I don't know, but what if there's a stick? You see? But it'll give you a plethora of different ideas. But none of those ideas will be positive. They'll all be negative ideas. And what does that result in? More anxiety, more anxiousness, more fear, more doubt, more overthinking. Now, human beings are so complex that when you do the overthinking, you're not just going to get one thought. That's why it's called overthinking. Okay? There's several thoughts going on. If you're a woman, oh boy. Okay, women are very good at multitasking. Okay? Because they're engineered to raise young mama bears. Okay? So what happens with women? They get emotionally overcome by all of this. Okay, I have this one client that used to be in the military, and she's with me, and she could not get through a vocalization exercise without breaking down into tears. But that only happened when her throat chakra began to open. When the throat chakra opens, the heart chakra opens. When the heart chakra opens, you break into tears. It's a very spiritual thing. Okay. But she had a lot of anxiety. Now her anxiety is leaving, and it's been 3 months. It's been 3 months. And she's healing. And there's no tears. So my first 2 questions with my clients are, how's your triggers? And how's your stress level? People that overthink, okay, here's what happens with overthinking. Because you're thinking more than one thought, guess what happens? If you don't dismiss this thought, say you start with one thought, and then it goes more than 6 seconds, and now you have other, your amygdala is saying, what about this? What if this? What if that? What if this? What if that? And you lock onto one of those thoughts for more than 6 seconds. The amygdala, okay, what about this? What about that? Then you have that tree of thoughts. Okay, so you have one thought, then the negative offshoots, another thought, then the negative offshoots, another thought, then the negative offshoots, and then you jump onto that train, and you know, another one here, another one there, another one, and then they go off again like that. How to stop anxiety attacks and overthinking. I can't sleep. You can't sleep. So yeah, you should actually message me so I can give you a more in-depth reply. Okay, so the vocalization exercise that I give people gets them over that. Vocal expression, try straight tones and try bring them out really strong. She let her anxiety, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so what happens with the several things happen with the vocalization. We produce straight tones, really strong with strength. Okay, and people can only express what their emotions will allow. Okay, because some people are more reserved, some people are more open, and if their throat chakra has not been opened, and we do this through pressure, right? Air pressure, straight tones. If their throat chakra has not been opened, then we need to work, you know, normally they work their way up. So every week they get stronger. We give them a exercise for their diaphragm. So there's an exercise for your diaphragm to make it strong, because that pushes up. Yeah, you can write to me. You can email me. Thank you, Jay. Give Jay some love. She's our moderator. She's doing such a great job on the chat. But we give you an exercise with your diaphragm first. Okay, well, that's the first thing we do, but we do it at the same time, but we do that first. Okay, so you get on a call with me and we do that first, and then we do the straight tone exercise. Now, when you look up somatic healing, Braveheart Princess, look up somatic healing, okay, and you'll see that they talk about humming, they talk about singing. This is not singing per se. These are just straight tones. Really strong, okay? Way stronger than that. You're very welcome. Look up somatic healing. It's a thing. Okay, but we don't do it exactly like it's described. It's kind of a weak version, I want to say. The way they describe it, it's kind of a weak overview. And I think if I were to do it that way, I wouldn't get the results like we get results from people. But the stronger that you can do this, the better for you. Okay, because your brain responds to frequency. Think energy, frequency, vibration, and velocity. And what happens is you trigger your neurotransmitters, which secrete endorphins and oxytocin. And when that happens, it starts to calm you. Okay, and we call these cycles. We don't call them treatments, because we're not making medical claims or anything. We need to stay away from those words. But what I can tell you is through about the third 1 hour cycle. So we do four. We call a month 4 sessions. So when you do about the third session, you start to really feel this, because the hormones have started to work. So it's a scientific thing. You can go to my website. It's hereforyoulifecoaching.com. All the research is there. Okay, so you may want to study it. So Dakota, yeah. So she's a client. She was a client. Janice was a client, and now she's a friend. Once a client, always a friend. So Janet says it's a feeling of purging things out of your head. Yeah, that's one way to describe it. It purges the anxiety out of your head. It purges the overthinking out of your head. Okay, because anxiety activates your amygdala, your survival brain. Okay, but it gets the fear out that way. Okay, so manifestation is the result of better choices, better decisions. Okay, because every action has a result. Okay, so the body releases cortisol and adrenaline when you're in fight or flight mode, okay, which is what anxiety does, okay? So anxiety will put you in a state of fight or flight all the time. Why? Because it creates that feedback loop. Okay, I'm just, you could go to a psychologist and he could give you a better in-depth description, but I don't want to confuse people, so I'm just giving basic overviews of this. Okay, and if you write to me, I can give you a more detailed descriptions, more detailed descriptions. So when the amygdala releases cortisol and adrenaline, okay, that's when you start to, well, not necessarily panic, but that's when you start being hyper alert. Okay, that's when you start looking for things, looking for threats. Okay, but if you stop the thoughts when you get them, right? Thought comes, you say stop, switch focus. Okay, so what I do is, I have so I use these a lot. Okay, so this is a vision board here, there, vision board. Okay, right now money's on my vision board. I have another one that has a car on it or whatever it is. Okay, so when I get a thought, a negative thought, I just pick up my phone, I look at this, and I think of that, whatever's on there. Sometimes it's pictures of friends, or sometimes it's my companies and their logos. I have one that has all my companies and logos on it. So when I get a negative thought, I say stop and I go here. So what does that do? It starts to control your thoughts. Why? Because after you do it for a while, your subconscious will have you do it all the time. Get a negative thought, pick up my, stop, look at, like that. Okay? Because it becomes a habit. Habits are very easy to acquire, negative and positive. So don't be fooled, and don't let people tell you that it's hard to establish positive habits, okay? Because it's not. It's very easy. But you have to do a routine, okay? You have to plan it out. That's why I was talking about block time earlier. So you have to do this routine. You have to do things in order, in a schedule, okay? Because if you do things out of order, what kind of results are you going to get? Disorderly results, okay? Things are going to be scattered. If you're scattered in here, you're scattered out here, okay? So the way people keep their immediate surroundings are the way they are in here, okay? Take a look. You go to some people's desks at work, right? Or wherever you are when you visit someone else's job. They have everything in place. They're super organized, right? That's the way they are in here. Okay, I work with CEOs. I work with people that manage large numbers of people. Okay, you should have seen this CEO that I just completed. I just completed like a year with him. For 1 year, he saw me 1 hour, once a week. He's a different guy, different person. But when I go into his office, whoa, everything is in place. Everything is neat. Everything is presentation, right? And that's the way he is in here, okay? So your brain prioritizes survival over creativity, survival over organization, survival over everything, okay? Because it's more important for you to survive. Okay, and this is because of the species. This is because you're a human being. Survival is important. It's important that you make it. It's important that you procreate. It's important that you bring more humans into the world. Okay, it's important that our species continues. Okay? So instead of thinking about what you want to, let's say, you want to create, or instead of thinking about all this good stuff all the time, okay, this is why there's no good stuff on, there's like that one feel-good story on the news at the very end. Why? Because humans look for the bad stuff first, and TV stations know that the bad news sells. They can market it, okay, because people will be attracted to it, because we want to see what's wrong. We're not looking for what's right in the world. That's why news is a thing, okay? But your mind becomes obsessed with what could go wrong. Okay? And you create hypotheses about what could go wrong. What could go wrong with this? What could go wrong with that? Right? How is that going to end? You always see people say that, right? That's not going to end well. They've already projected it out. Okay? Anxiety will narrow your perception. Okay? It'll narrow your perception. How does it do that? Your reticular activating system. It narrows your perception because your reticular activating system starts to focus on what you're focused on. Okay? Energy flows where attention goes. What you focus on intensifies. Okay? So what are you focused on? Things that are going wrong? Okay. Those things will go into your subconscious. Will you know? No. It's called subconscious for a reason. It works below the surface. So when you're receiving a bunch of stuff that you don't want, okay, and I don't think your therapist will tell you this. Maybe if you have a good therapist. Okay, but when you're receiving things you don't want and you're constantly focused on what you don't want, and then you get more of what you don't want, that's the negative feedback loop. Okay? So if you're anxious, what happens with the reticular activating system? It's looking for threats, problems, rejection, lack, limitation. It's looking for all that stuff. Okay? It's looking for all these things. The vocalization exercise will pull you out of this loop. The affirmations, meditation, and visualization starts bringing in what you want. But you have to decide what that is. Anything you want. You can have, do, or be anything. But what the people don't tell you, because of commerce, because they're selling you a big, huge, expensive program, what they're not telling you is that all of this is subconscious. Okay, the 3 states of awareness in you: conscious, subconscious, superconscious. Let's explain this out in the simplest way I know how. Look at it like a computer. Your conscious mind selects the target, selects the topic. Consciously does something. Okay, like I'm going to tie my shoes right now. Okay, boom. Okay. Once you pick up your shoe, it transfers to the subconscious. Why? Because your subconscious knows how to tie shoes. You don't even have to think about it. All you have to do is make the decision, I'm going to put on my shoes. Then the subconscious, right? You lean over, grab your shoes. Okay, it's like clockwork, right? You tie your shoes. Okay, so the handoff is pretty quick. But your conscious mind, look at it like your operating system on a laptop or a phone or whatever, okay? If you have an iPhone, you know how you download those new operating systems, updates? Okay, look at it as that. That's your operating system. Okay, now your subconscious is your hard drive where the programs are stored because they are programs. Okay? And your subconscious is running programs that you're not aware of. You're not consciously aware of. Okay? But they're operating here in your subconscious. How do you know what your subconscious is running? Look at your results. Look at the results you're getting. Are you stuck on something? Do you go in circles with certain things? Okay? But your subconscious does that. Okay? Wash, rinse, repeat. What is the superconscious? The superconscious is the network that we're all plugged into, or consciousness, or God, or source. Okay? All of those things. But that's what the superconscious is. Again, I've learned something new today, utilizing block time for projects and productivity. Oh, good. Good. I'm glad you're learning things. Yeah, I love to share these things because I did not know these things before I started putting them into action, and then it turned out rather well with a lot of things. But there's the easy way to do things. Okay, creating good habits. And there's the hard way of doing things. Because life unfolds for you like this. Okay? Life doesn't happen to you like this. and you have to dodge stuff, and you have, oh, what's happening today? What's gonna happen today? Oh, I gotta dodge that. Oh, I gotta dodge this, whatever. Life doesn't happen like that. Life happens like this for you, based upon what's in your subconscious, based upon what the program is. And that's why sometimes you get stuck on certain results until you change the actions. And the way to permanently change the actions, or let's say overcome the old program, is to install a new program, just like a computer, exactly like a computer. Okay? Computers are extensions of human beings. You are grateful. Oh, thank you, Margot. Thank you, thank you. I'm grateful you're here. I'm grateful you're here. So opportunities can be all over the place. But if you're stuck in that pattern, you're going to miss the opportunities. Something will happen. Something's going to go wrong. Like there's that one little thing that's going to go wrong. Why? Because you're looking for those things without even knowing it. Okay? Without even, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. Without even knowing it, without being aware, okay, or conscious, the conscious mind, okay, conscious, subconscious, superconscious, it all goes back to the subconscious. What about prayer? How does that work? If we look at the spiritual aspect of this, how does that work? How does the energy in here manifest good stuff? The energy in here, okay, let's say you're subconscious, okay, but the energy in here will attract like energy. Like attracts like. Okay? Why is it magic? Is it voodoo? Is it, weird energy kind of? No. It's not. We all gravitate to like-mindedness. All of us. Okay? So you go and hang with the football crowd. You guys are watching football. Everybody enjoys football. The people that enjoy football are going to hang together. The intellectuals will hang together. Why? Well, they probably think that watching football is a waste of time or whatever. I'm just saying. Okay? But like-mindedness, birds of a feather flock together. That's why you have all those idioms. Okay? This is why like attracts like and opposites attract is not applicable. Okay, we hear this in society. Oh, opposites attract. Oh, she's quiet and I'm extroverted, so we match. Not necessarily. Okay? Now, the last couple of things. I made a list over here. And I'm kind of like working off the list, but anxiety creates emotional contradiction. Okay? Emotional contradiction. We'll go over this tomorrow because tomorrow we're going to have another session about anxiety. Anxiety blocks confident action. Things for you to think about. Okay? Let's see. And anxiety disrupts nervous system regulation. We're going to talk about that. Everything is stored in your nervous system. That's why the vocal exercise pulls you out. Okay? Because it separates you energetically. Your nervous system is directly related to your energy. It is your energy. It's part of your energy. Okay, so the opposite state that support. Okay, yeah, and then we're gonna talk more about that. But I'm gonna leave it there. And then it's that time. It's 8 a.m. We've been doing this for an hour already. So I hope you have some useful information. I hope maybe I was able to share something that you can identify with. And if you want to go to the website, the research is there. Okay, we put up white papers. White papers are doctors and medical research and psychological research, and we have all the links on our website. There's tons of them. There's lots of resources so that you can learn more about how to get rid of anxiety, how to get rid of fear, how to get unstuck so that you can manifest good things in your life, so good things can come. Sometimes you have to be patient. Okay, even myself, sometimes I have to be patient. I have to wait. Okay, but the good things come instead of the things you don't want. Okay, so that's the takeaway. That's the takeaway for today. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. We're here every day on 7 platforms worldwide. We're on YouTube and all kinds. So good it works. Yes, thank you, Janice. Thank you for endorsing the program. We really appreciate you. Thank you, Bill. Yep, thank you. Could you please tell again about what you write in white paper? Oh, white papers are what they call scientific research, and they're on our website, hereforyoulifecoaching.com. You can read the white papers for yourself. That's medical and scientific research. So everything that we're talking about is medical and scientific. We're not talking about, the kind of manifestation that you normally see. Oh, Sarah, you're here. Oh, thank you, thank you. There you go. There you go, Sarah. Sarah's my client in the UK. Okay, my whole family's on the chat.